We learned about performing calculations on the whole columns, and now this exercise will be very similar, but this time we will introduce a table object. At the beginning of this exercise we have a table starting on the row number 7, and this is at the moment just a simple range of cells. In Microsoft Excel there exists a special object that is called the table. You can find it on the ribbon in many places, like insert a table, like format this table, and many more, but usually I use the shortcut Ctrl+T to create a table like this. The table needs to have headers, and when you hit OK, it will become formatted, although you can also turn off all of the formattings that you can find in Excel. If you didn't have a column name, the column names will appear automatically as column 1, column 2, and so on, but we can change the name to something that is desired in our scenario, like the product name. What is the biggest advantage of working on table? Tables are able to eat next rows and next columns that you prepare. So if we in the future add some new rows in here, you will see that the table is expanding. That is why when we create a calculation based on a table, we would like to use this mechanism to keep the table always up to date. I will remove this operation, and now we will test expanding by columns, since we are supposed to create a column that is called sales total. If we create a new header, you can see that the table is expanding, and now we can create a new formula, which is the quantity multiplied by unit price. If you click what is recommended when working with tables, cells in the same row, you will see that you don't address the cells by the cell address, but instead you use the reference to the columns, where the @ sign is responsible for keeping you in the same row. So when you hit enter, you will see that the calculation has been performed properly. But what is more, the formula has been copied to the whole table, and you don't need to copy it anymore. What if we would create another sales total header? You can see that it is not acceptable in case of tables, and the sales total has been indexed by number 2. And we are doing so to create a new column, this time by referencing the columns by normal cells, which means I would like to multiply E8 by F8. You can see that both of the formulas give exactly the same result. They also propagate to the lower rows, but the first solution seems to be more transparent than the cell formula, so that is why it is recommended to write the formulas on a table like this. In the next lesson we will discover the concept of named defined ranges, and the table design tab allows us to see that one of the objects that has already its name within Excel is our table. It is at the moment called table 1, but we can call it sales. Why is that? Whenever we will in the future reference to this table, we will easily see that we are referencing not some kind of worksheet, but this time we will reference a table. So let's start the third exercise and calculate the measures we have in here. The first one is the sum, and we would like to sum the sales total. We cannot reference the whole column since we would create a circular reference, but in this scenario we can try to point just the whole column of a table, and you can see now that we are not referencing to particular cells, but instead we are referencing to a column of a table, and when we close the bracket and hit OK, we will calculate the sum of sales total. And all of the other formulas will work exactly the same. Average of unit price, we reference the whole column. Max of the quantity, we just reference the whole column. Oops, I ran too far and you can see I stopped addressing the table, so I need to correct that. And now number of cells containing text, which is count A from the whole table. And you can see now we reference to this defined name of a table. And when we close the bracket, the calculation works. We have also something that is called number of empty cells, and still in Excel we have the count blank calculation, but instead of pointing the table now with a mouse, I can reference with my keyboard to my cells and hit enter, and you can see that we have one empty cell in there. There are a few more things that you need to know when you start the journey with Excel tables. The first one is, let's try to copy the last row in the table to make a kind of duplicate in here. You will see that I have just copied and pasted just one row, but all of the calculations have been copied right away. The second thing, all of my calculations have been recalculated since they refer to the whole columns, and this is the approach you would really like to take very often, because this is a kind of reporting automation without using any other tools, just a simple table. Second thing, on table design tab you can also find some table style options, and one of them is total row. And when you turn on the total row, the total usually appears at the end of the table, but this is not usually the case, because you can turn on totals on any columns that you wish. For example, sum of total sales, average of a unit price, max of the quantity. These are all the aggregations that you can turn on for particular columns. They use a very complex formula that is called subtotal, that is not subject of this lesson, but what is especially interesting, you can move the cells we have just created somewhere outside the table and they will still work. And what you can see in here, that they reference to a particular table and to a specific column of the table. And the last part of the exercise is to calculate the percentage share of each order line in total sales. So we will create a new column, and then we will try to calculate what is the result when we divide the sales total by the sum of the whole column. In the formula bar, you can see that we actually reference to the same column, but the first reference includes an icon, which means we reference just to a single row, and the second one references to the whole column. And at the end, we will get the result that we can format to a percentage, and we can also do a recheck by calculating the sum at the end.